What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we are checking out Nothing. Well, it's actually two new devices from the smartphone brand Nothing. Their new Phone 3a and Phone 3a Pro. Now, if you're not already familiar with Nothing, they've been releasing a couple really unique Android devices each year over the last couple of years now, to much fanfare, actually. And between both the hardware and the software, if you're tired of the same old, maybe you should give Nothing a try. Their new Phone 3a and Phone 3a Pro fall somewhere within the budget/mid-range tier, depending on how you categorize pricing. And these phones pack, well, obviously a lot of unique features, but also some solid core specs that might just make either one of them a top affordable Android phone for 2025. Now, there's a lot to talk about here, but first things first, let me just quickly unbox them, and then we'll get into what these phones are all about and what's new. We'll start with the regular Phone 3a, and sliding it on out here, the first thing you get is the device itself. Now, on the inside flap of the box, you can see a nice little thank you message from the company. As far as the included accessories, well, there's a couple things actually. First, the nicest SIM ejector tool you'll literally ever see, and then a USB-C cable for charging and a little instruction booklet with some helpful setup information. As for the 3a Pro, well, it's the exact same unboxing experience. You got the phone, the same nice little message on the box, and the same cable and instruction booklet. No differences here that I'm aware of. As for the differences between the phones, this is fortunately very straightforward. The regular 3a is $379. So again, depending on how you feel about that, I think that's pretty budget friendly. And the 3a Pro is going to be $459. Still far cheaper than any E or FE device from an Apple or Samsung. If you choose to go with the 3a Pro, you'll get yourself a periscope telephoto lens as the secondary shooter compared to a regular telephoto lens on the standard 3a, along with a better 50 megapixel selfie camera. And that's it. Everything else between these two phones, spec for spec, is exactly the same. And that makes it easy, to be honest. Basically, if pictures and videos and selfies are most important to you, especially zoom and portrait shots and macro photography, then the 3a Pro is the one for you. For everyone else, the regular 3a will do just fine. It has a great regular camera setup already, and you literally don't miss out on anything else. If you want to learn more about either one of these phones, I'll leave a link to Nothing's website down below in the video description. They go on sale this month for most of the world, Europe, Asia, but here in the US, these phones are still only sold through Nothing's beta program, and you'll have to do some finagling with your carrier to get them to work. Size-wise, both these phones are big, 6.77 inches to be exact, with a pretty decent 88% screen-to-body ratio. They are ever so slightly larger than last year's 2A and 2A Plus, but while the bezels are still visible, these phones don't feel totally gargantuan. Maybe we're all just used to manhandling massive phones nowadays. Around back, well, I think this is what Nothing is most known for with their phones. These new ones carry on that unique sort of see-through industrial look with those flashing, blinking light bars surrounding the cameras called the glyph interface. The LED array does a lot of different things. It's your notification alert, it can be part of your ringtone, it can act as a timer or a music visualizer. It's a really unique touch that's not just a fun aesthetic, but actually functional. The rest of the back panel is all aesthetics, but these phones are unique and eye-catching, and a stark departure from the boring, colorless bricks we've been seeing lately. Now, I mentioned already that the cameras are the only actual difference between these two phones, and you'll see that with the physical camera modules too. The regular Phone 3a has more of a 3-lens camera bar. The circle that enshrines it is just a design within the back panel. But on the 3a Pro, that whole circle is the camera bump, and the lenses are obviously placed in various different spots. A few other things to note about the builds. These new Nothing phones are now IP64 dust and splash resistant. There's an unnamed high-grade glass for the back panel with some aluminum accents paired to a new Chinese brand Panda glass covering the front, and sandwiched in between is a recycled aluminum midframe. The sides and edges are totally flat, same with the back and the front, and the off-color buttons on each side are a nice finishing touch. Speaking of the buttons, on the left side, you'll see the volume buttons, of course. On the right, the familiar power button with a new neighbor, the Essential key. More on that in just a moment. There's a tiny microphone hole at the top, and at the bottom, one half of the dual speaker setup, alongside the USB-C port and your SIM card tray. The regular Phone 3a, oddly enough, doesn't support eSIM, so I guess that's one more difference, but both phones support dual physical SIMs. games. No micro SD card support here though, and there are a few configuration options for the 3A and 3A Pro, either 128 or 256 gigabytes of storage, and either 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM. So let's talk about that essential key. Now this feature is still in development, but this is essentially Nothing's take on AI, at least a sort of AI helper that isn't intrusive or otherwise intertwined within the OS. Nothing describes it as an AI-powered hub for notes, ideas, and inspirations for now, with additional features launching in the coming months. And at the moment, you can use the essential space to save screenshots, notes, and voice recordings, and automatically have it all organized, personalized, and summarized. If you save an actionable voice recording, Essential Space can also complete some of those tasks for you, like adding an event to a calendar or setting reminders. And as someone who's been a little less enthusiastic about all things AI taking over our smartphones, I think this is a really interesting compromise. And I'm excited to see how Nothing improves on it while retaining all these features within a set app rather than intruding on all the other apps and settings within the device. Both phones do have the same in-display optical fingerprint sensor, which is perfectly fine for this price point. And as far as the viewing experience, those massive 6.77-inch displays are full HD, 2392 by 1080 resolution AMOLED panels that you can set to a 120Hz high refresh rate. Those screen specs alone would be a great setup already, but Nothing took it a step further with the brightness. 1300 nits of user-controlled max brightness and up to 3000 nits of peak brightness. Those are the craziest numbers out of everything. I mean, the iPhone 16 doesn't get that bright. Neither does the flagship S25. Now, these aren't entirely flagship screens. They aren't the top-tier AMOLED technology that's available now that you would see on the S25. But for under $400, I mean, this is far better than you could ask for. I always say that the screen should be the most important aspect of a smartphone, regardless of the price, and it seems like Nothing agrees with that. You can say people don't care about certain things, like refresh rate if you're an iPhone user, but I do think the folks looking at these super unique Android devices do care about refresh rate and resolution and an AMOLED panel, and you really do get it all here. I think the 3A and 3A Pro already have a lot to offer, so it's tough to say that the screen is the thing that makes these phones such a good value, but it's definitely one of the top reasons for sure. This is just a great viewing experience and an overall display setup for the price. Also, the dual speaker setup sounds better than average too. The secondary speaker, especially within the earpiece, sounds louder and more clear than a lot of phones I usually use, and it's harder to hear over video, but have a quick listen and see if you can hear that too. Inside, Nothing opted for the Qualcomm Snapdragon 7S Gen 3 processor to power both these phones, and like I mentioned earlier, either 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM. Here are the Geekbench numbers. Again, both phones do have the exact same specs, so any score discrepancy here isn't an actual spec or performance difference. And while there may have been a couple other chipsets to choose from, I think Snapdragon 7S is a perfectly good option for these phones. I know they're really unique, really interesting Android devices that are probably made for the techie type people, so every spec matters. But you still have to remember these are sub $500 phones. Still, Nothing could have shoved some older off-brand SoC in here, and that wouldn't have been surprising. Plenty of other budget devices have a MediaTek or a Exynos, and no matter what Android device I talk about, it seems like a bulk of the comments are commenting on the inclusion or lack of a Snapdragon chip in various devices. So Nothing made the right choice here. They gave the people what they wanted. But it's not just the specs that sell this phone, it's this super unique software experience too. Now, you don't have to be all in on Nothing. Their Nothing OS 3.1 skin can take some getting used to, and you can enable or disable various elements, but it's a super fluid, very friendly, very easy to use Android experience that I realized very quickly that I enjoy. There is even a pretty comprehensive update waiting for me out of the box with a long list of changes. And just so you know, not every app is Nothing. you get some familiar stock Android flair as well. Nothing is promising 6 years of future software updates for these phones, though that's a little misleading because it's actually just 3 major Android OS releases and 3 additional years of security updates after that. But once again, for phones within these price brackets, your $400-ish either way is going to go a long way. Also powering these phones is the same size 5,000 mAh battery. That's a perfectly fine size, and nothing did bump up the charging speeds just a smidge to 50 watt wired, so you can get juiced up from 0 to 100% in just under 1 hour, or at least 50% in around 19 minutes. What's still missing though? Wireless charging, which I sort of understand if it does keep the cost down. Finally, for the camera setups, nothing slapped on some fresh new 50 megapixel main shooters, an 8 megapixel 120 degree ultra-wide lens on both, and the difference, like I explained earlier, is with the telephoto lenses. The regular phone 3A has a 50 megapixel regular telephoto lens, while the Pro has the 50 megapixel periscope telephoto lens. What does that get you? Well, up to 3 times optical zoom, and much further digital zoom, along with a dedicated macro mode for up-close pictures, and some additional portrait shooting options. The selfie camera seems to be better on the Pro as well. It's a 50 megapixel lens versus the 32 megapixel lens on the regular 3A. Aside from that stuff, most everything else within the very streamlined camera app looks to be the same. You just have to decide here if the extra zoom or additional camera features in the Pro are worth it to you in the end. For some people, that very well may be the case, but I think that the regular 3A has a perfectly fine, well-rounded 3-lens setup already that will probably work for 99% of people. So I'm a little less convinced that the Pro is worth it, but that's just my own opinion based on how I use my smartphone day to day. So there you go, that's what's new with nothing. They're 3A and 3A Pro. What do you guys think about these phones? Is nothing headed in the right direction? Are you considering either one of these as your next device right now? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.